In order to bring in the Emergency Act, Trudeau had to say that there were particular kinds of threat to Canada. The one the one linked in the description right now is the one about, I think it's about people using violence to overthrow Canada. Okay, so the convoy was very loud. It's very loud with the horns. It's not the brightest idea, in my opinion. Actually, the horns were fun for a little while. They could have been used more judiciously. I agree. Sorry, truckers, but I think you went overboard with that, and it hurt your cause. The border closures were a bad idea. But they were not violent, and they said constantly that they can't become violent because actually, you know what? Those guys really know what they're talking about. Peaceful protest. You cannot bring in the Emergency Act against a peaceful protest. And a peaceful protest is essentially the right to peaceful protest is one of the most basic. Because what happens when you have a government that's just screwing up constantly and you can't seem to get rid of them through the election system, and they just keep on acting the way that they act? What are you supposed to do? You can write letters to editors, you can create a YouTube channel like True North, say for example, and you can talk and you can talk and you can talk, and that has a huge impact. But it's still not working. Then you have the right to a peaceful protest, and they insisted that it be a peaceful protest. I don't think that there's a single incident of any one of them engaging in any extreme violence. There might have been some punchy guys at the front of the line that the media videoed. I'm sure that they were loud. It was not extreme violence. I mean, Vancouver, they win a hockey game. It was extreme violence, right? That happened in Vancouver a couple of decades ago, I guess. But there's no extreme violence. And they didn't intend to be violent. They did say, there was a few of them that said that they wanted to overthrow the government. I sympathize with that. But you can't overthrow them violently. And I doubt that they ever said that they were going to do it violently. But they're going to stay there and they're going to talk until something happened. I think that was a fairly influential people who said that. So the government does have that on its side. But the government would have to be able to prove that that threat was a legitimate threat. You have people saying, oh, we need to overthrow the government. If they're not capable of actually overthrowing it, then it's not a threat. And you certainly don't bring in the Emergencies Act that mess with the fundamental liberties of everyone in Canada. If they didn't like you, then they were going to be able to do certain things to you. You're going to be under surveillance. They could freeze your bank account. They could put you in jail if you were guilty of the wrong things. And literally, like, take your money. Not just freeze your bank account so you can't use it for a while. That money was given to those truckers. It was the truckers' money. So the money's been taken from the truckers. That's stole. They stole your money. And they stole the money from the people who gave that money to them. The government stole, I believe it's at this point around $20 million. And a lot of it in small bills. Small bills with small amounts. So that's very serious, right? And so you think it couldn't be more obvious that what happened was that you had, it was the largest, most peaceful protest, convoy protest in the history of the world by a factor of about probably 50 or something, right? People, it was famous all over the world. You had conversations with truckers and things like that. And they drove across the country. They stood out in the freezing cold for 2 or 3 weeks. They didn't engage in any violence. And now you look at it, and the newspapers are saying, and this was in the National Post, they said that 65% of people felt ashamed of the protest. Really? Okay, you're lying. Either you're lying or Canada's a lot stupider country than I think it is, and I don't think it is. You're just lying. And one of the things that they said, oh, look at the trucker protest. It shows again, that Canada can't get anything done. So we have trouble building pipelines and probably MRT lines, whatever, buildings because of all the regulations or whatever. So Canada has a difficult time getting anything done. And the trucker protest was another example of Canada not being able to get things done. This is torture. This is flat out torture to say that to those guys, because they did do something. What they did is that they put together the largest and probably the most peaceful trucker protest in the history of the entire world. They got a lot done. Right? And it's just like there's just this fire hose of absolute horse shit that they just spray around because they like that. They like to do that. And because it completely destroys your morale and your sense of reality. It's gaslighting in the extreme. This was in the National Post. So when I started the one just prior to this, I'm going, I can't believe that nobody's even talking about whether or not it was legal for them to bring forward the Emergency Act. It probably wasn't. It almost definitely wasn't. According to the strict letter of the law, they might not get charged. The legal system might not work very well, or maybe lawyers understand this better than I do. But I don't. I'm sure they understand it better than I do. But whether or not they're legally guilty, I think is beyond question. Morally guilty, 100%, 1,000%, they're morally guilty. The truckers were protesting their tyranny, and the Liberal government responded with more tyranny. And now you find a hard time. It's a little bit difficult to find anybody referencing that. Like you could type in Tucker Carlson or True North or Ezra Levant there's a lot of places you go find people still talking about that. The mainstream media, no, they want to forget this. Everything the Liberals do is more idiotic, more corrupt, more cynical, more suspicious, more perverse, more illegal, more tyrannical than the thing that they did the last time. Because all of this time, people have been arguing that they are a tyranny, right? There's no way that Jordan Peterson and Rex Murphy and, et cetera, are warning about how tyrannical this government is. And it's not just the people in power. It's a lot of people that are coming out of the educational systems and bureaucracies. Canada's an incredibly tyrannical country. If you want to express an opinion that's opposite to theirs, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. And the government responded with even worse tyranny. That is a story. It's one of the most important stories in Canadian history. How could you have a more important story? A tyrannical government is protested against by peaceful protesters. One of the biggest biggest trucker protest in history. It was famous around the world. People admired us, really admired us, for a long time all over the world. The government responds with tyrannical measures, seizing bank accounts, etc. And now, in a way, it comes back to the news again. And now a lot of the news agencies are just trying to cover it up, or just trying to move on. No. That can't happen. It's got to be against the law to bring in the Emergency Act when it's not justified. That's got to be a crime. He's got to go to prison. Trudeau's got to go to prison for some period of time for this latest of crimes and for previous crimes. So I think that what the truckers maybe should have done is actually just gotten out of their trucks. And on Capitol Hill, I think that this would have been super interesting if they had said, okay, we're all going to go home peacefully, absolutely guaranteed tomorrow, but we're going to maintain a kind of a speaker's corner on Parliament Hill, right outside the front steps. And maybe the city could cooperate with us, or maybe we could do this. So it'll be limited, like you'll have to make an appointment or win a lottery or something like that. And you're going to be able to go onto the grounds and talk. Not with the microphone, I don't think. And people are, how would you limit the number of people that went? Because that could turn into a real circus, couldn't it? Maybe it wouldn't be a speaker's corner. Maybe it would be just one place where you could go to gather information. Get our people to set up an information booth on the steps of the Parliament. And if you kick us off, we're all coming back. That's what we should have done. I think. We should have said, we're going to have 15 people here. They're going to be reporting on all of this, on the Emergency Act itself now. And if you try to kick us out, we're all coming back. The trucks are coming back, and people are coming back on foot, bicycle, boat. I think you could arrive there by boat. Canada should have done that. And there was, I think it was the GoFundMe. It was a Liberal MP. And he's questioning the GoFundMe guy. And the GoFundMe, I don't know how he maintained his patience. He's saying to the GoFundMe guy, don't you know that there are breaking noise bylaws? Like, how could you set up a GoFundMe account for people who are breaking noise bylaws? Well, the guy should have said, they were protesting tyranny, so I looked past the noise bylaw. He should have said, look, I can understand why people hate you. You're acting like a tyrant right now. You're asking me questions. If it doesn't go the way that you want, you interrupt me. You're not allowing me to answer the questions you ask, even. One of the other MPs said, no, this is becoming abusive. The guy who set up the GoFundMe page was abused by a Liberal MP who was just absolutely out of his mind. He couldn't believe that a bunch of, white truckers could make this kind of mess. The MP himself was not a white truck driver. He's a big guy, but he wasn't a truck driver. And he was abusive, delusional, and so insulted that we could ever question on this level. Okay, I got one more of these.